All right, guys, let's jump in, okay? So we got a lot to talk about. We're going to start with Rosh Hashanah, okay? Rosh Hashanah. And the way I want to do is I want to go through a combination of halacha, of the laws, as well as the deeper ideas. They got into the theory behind it, okay? So we're going to kind of combine them. We're going to go through different topics on Rosh Hashanah, and then I'm going to give you some halachas about it, but I'm going to make it make sense what the deeper meanings are, okay? So let's start with the first thing. What happened on Rosh Hashanah?
The gates of heaven opened.
No.
Creation of Adam and Eve.
Creation of Adam and Eve. Not the creation of the world.
The book of life opens.
Well, that's what happens, but I meant what historically happened.
Oh.
So I meant, sorry, I wasn't clear. What historically is not the creation of the world. That's not right. It's the creation of Adam and Eve. Okay, that's what we're celebrating. It's very important to realize that because for many reasons there's going to be a big difference of that. First of all, it's then one of the simplest answers to the question of how the age of the universe. Because we're not actually saying that the beginning of the universe is 5,774 years. We're saying Adam and Eve are 5,774 years. That's the simplest answer, which is that means that the other days could have been eras, epochs. And that's obviously could be true because until the fourth day there's no sun and moon. So then we're not talking about, normal 24-hour days. Now again, the other people don't believe it. Nachmanides says it is 24-hour days, and then you can read a book by Gerald Schroeder, how time is relative, and blah, blah. There's many other answers. I don't want to get into that. If you've got good Kabbalistic answers, that's not for today, okay? We're celebrating the creation of Adam and Eve, okay? That is what happened in Rosh Hashanah. Now, the thing I want to figure out is why is Rosh Hashanah the day of judgment? And that's a hard thing to understand. Why? Everyone knows, you said before, the book of life, the book of death, everything, the person is being judged in Rosh Hashanah, but why? Why is it the day of judgment of all days?
It's the beginning.
Okay.
So
it means it's
new
the end of the last year.
Okay. Let's go through a few possibles to try to explain what they're saying. Now, first of all, some opinions say because Adam was judged favorably on Rosh Hashanah.
You mean when he was born?
Yeah. He had a very busy first day.
Adam was judged, not Chava.
Adam and Chava, both of them.
She.
But they were both judged. When I say Adam, I usually mean both, because if you look at the text, it says that God made them male and female and called them Adam. Adam is the name for both male and female. Then Chava takes the name Chava, and he calls the name Adam. But originally it says that they're both created as Adam. We're not going to get into it today. We'll get into it when we get into other topics. But actually, they were created originally back to back, and then they were separated. And that's a very, very important concept in relationship of husband and wife, which we'll get to another time. The discussion is it the rib, meaning the wife's part of the husband in that sense, or is it back to back, which means equal but facing in different ways. And then when they're split, they come face to face, meaning that they could choose to become one through their own free will. When you're back to back, you are automatically one, but it doesn't take any work on your part. It's no discussion. I just want to throw that out. That's a very deep discussion and very important. But one explanation is Adam was judged favorably on the first day. He had a very busy day. He was born. He got married. He sinned. Yeah, it was a very, very busy day. It was like it was a full day. Now, what happened was they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Again, you have to understand the reality of the Garden of Eden is very different than our reality, and that's why we'll say that we get to the book of Bereshit. But he was judged because he sinned. He ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve. And they were supposed to die in that day. Now God said, okay, you're not going to die. You're going to eventually die, which he wouldn't have died before. And one day in God's time is like 1,000 days in human time, whatever that means. So God gave him 1,000 years. So he was judged in a way that was favorable. So some commentaries say that the same benefit that we got a precedent for getting a good judgment, even if we were not so good. So God said, okay, this is the day, we'll keep the day of judgment for everyone. That's one explanation why it's the day of judgment. Okay? we were judged before, we weren't given the heavy burden of the law, we were given a break, so too it's a day of judgment. That's one explanation. Another explanation is what Adam and Effie just said before. You gotta understand, this is very, very, very important to understand. You see, if you count, how many days of the week are there? How many days of the week are there? 7, you counted right. 7 days a week. 6 in Shabbos. Now, that was the easy question. Here comes the hard question. How many Yom Tovs are there? How many Jewish holidays? Now, I don't mean rabbinic holidays, because those are not Yom Tovs, days where you can't do work. How many are there in Jewish law?
4?
7.
7.
I was going to say
7. Because, yeah, it makes sense.
Well,
When it's a
outside of Israel, it's 9.
Yeah, right, that's the big deal. There are 7 days of Yom Tovs. Right? Why? Passover has 2 days. The first day and the 7th day are holidays. Right? The first day we get out of Egypt, the 7th day when we cross the Red Sea. Okay? Then you have Shavuot, we get the Torah. Then you have 2 days, you have Sukkot, the first day, and then you have the 8th day, it's called Shmini Atzeret. That's 5. Then you have Rosh Hashanah, and you have Yom Kippur.
Rosh Hashanah is 2 days.
Yeah, but really it's 1 day. From the Torah, it's 1 day. It's just that we make it 2 days even in Israel. That's a discussion why they did that, but they did it because of the, Rosh Hashanah is different than other holidays where the holidays are on the 15th of the month. So what happens is, Rosh Hashanah is on the new month, right? It's a Rosh Chodesh, it's the new beginning of the month. So if you're in Israel, when the court says, okay, let's say this day is the first of the month, so you can figure the 15th of the month, right? But on Rosh Hashanah, theoretically, the witnesses have to see the new moon to make the day. They might not come until the very end of the day. So that's why they made it 2 days.
So do we count Shmini Atzeret?
Yes, that's right. So there's 7 days. That's very interesting. 7 days, 7 holidays, and 7 days.
What about Shabbat?
7 days. Right, 7 days. The Shabbat is 7 days. No, Shabbat is one of the 7. It's not a Yom Tov. That's one of the days. One of the days of the week.
Okay.
Then I have 7 days, 7 Yom Tovs. Not. Now, sometimes you can imagine how they parallel. How do you think? What do you think Shabbos is compared to? Which one of those holidays?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, right? It's the ultimate Shabbat, right? But these Yom Tovs, what they're doing is they are making the holiness of the day, injecting them into the days of the week. Now, based on that, what day would you think is Rosh Hashanah?
Sunday.
Why Sunday?
Because it's the beginning of the week.
Beginning, okay, it's one possibility.
Or Friday, because it comes before Yom Kippur.
Right, Friday, because Rosh Hashanah is the lead-in to Yom Kippur.
Also, if that's when Adam and Eve were created, that would have been
On
the first
Friday, they'd be created on Friday also, that's right. Right, you everyone see that?
Oh, yeah.
Now watch this, this is very important. So, what happens is like this. Every holiday in Judaism has we're not commemorating, remembrance of Egypt like it's a party remembering it. That's not what's happening, it's not the holiday itself. What happens is, on Passover, the holiness of that holiday, of freedom, you get to re-experience. Got to understand this point. Jewish holidays are not about, let's just have a memorial. That's not what it's about. What is it? In Jewish thought, the way time works is like this. It's a circle, but it's a circle that continues moving forward.
Like a spiral.
The spiral, exactly. That's why the famous bracha, Shechianu v'kimanu v'gyanu azman hazeh, that God you...
That's good.
That is, that Hashem, you brought us to this time, Shechianu, right? You brought us to this time. Let's say you make the blessing on the candles. The miracles you did, on these times, in these days. Meaning that every time you come back to that same point in history, you come back to Passover, you're touching now the Passover of the same experience you had in the beginning. Every year you come to Purim and you say, oh, I have to destroy a Moloch. I didn't do it this year. Bummer. You're wrong. You did it. Every year when you have your Purim Suda, you are the same energy of the winning of the battle of Amalek and Purim is happening on that Purim, and you are destroying Amalek in some level. Every year on Passover, when it's a time of freedom, and you're in the winter, and you're stuffed, it's miserable, and then the flowers come out, and you taste what true freedom is, you're actually tasting the holiness of the holiday of Passover. That happens every single year. According to that, it's a very important way to understand Jewish holidays. Again, maybe so I get the point clear. It's not just, let's remember we got the Torah. Let's remember we came out of Egypt. No. I'm re-experiencing the special holiness of that day, which is opening me up. And it opens up every holiday that I experience, parallels one of the days of the week. And we're infusing with these 7 holidays, we're infusing our whole lives with this holiness that goes to each day. Very important concept. According to that, what happens on Rosh Hashanah? It's not freedom. It's not getting the Torah. So what's happening? So Rosh Hashanah, what's happening is you're re-experiencing being born. You're born again! Hallelujah! You are experiencing being born. That's what's happening. You are starting your existence again. Every year, Rosh Hashanah, you're revisiting the beginning of existence, of your existence. Now, it's very easy to understand, therefore, why it's the Day of Judgment. Because if you set up a company, right, and you passed, the year went by, and now you're back to the beginning, the first question you're going to ask yourself is, well, we started this whole cycle, we're back to the beginning, have we accomplished anything? Why did you open the company in the first place? You opened the company, you wanted to make money. So now when you come back to the time that you're reassessing your opening day, you say, well, did we make money? If you were born last year, when you come around to Rosh Hashanah again and you're going to be reborn, so God says, wait a minute, before I give you another year of life, before you're reborn, let's see what you did with the last dosage I gave you. That's what's happening. Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment because you're back to that energy of being born, you're starting again, and to get another dosage of life, we want to know that the last dosage we gave you, how did you use it? That's the idea. Okay? I'm trying to do the background of what is questions, comments, thoughts. Yeah.
Why is being born connected to Erev Shabbos Friday?
So here comes I'll get that that's a very good question you kind of led me in. But I know this is kind of a deep point, but make sure we got this. We got this point? Again, let's just say it one more time succinctly. The idea is that Rosh Hashanah, every Jewish holiday, you get to experience the holiness that was specially put aside for that holiday. Okay? Rosh Hashanah's holiness is birth, starting. And therefore, every year when you restart, we have to analyze, if they gave you a year of life last year, well, what'd you do with it? So, okay, we like what you did. We're going to continue this project. You get another year. Because you have to be born now. God's got to inject you with that same energy. So now we look, okay, so what'd you do in the last year, and how do we go forward now? We give you another year, did you do good or bad? What'd you do? Okay, that's the concept. So any questions, thoughts, comments on what I'm saying? So what it makes sense? Will it make sense?
It sounds a lot like an annual performance review.
Yeah, that's exactly the term. I wish I had the terminology, but I'll write that, an annual performance review. Term I'm going to use from now on. Thank you very much.
So does it go first day Passover, Sunday, second day Monday, like in order up to a year?
I don't know. Sadak has a whole, I guess from Sadak, he has a whole different approaches of what it is, and not necessarily. But I mean, I don't get this now, but if you think about it, and you think about it for a moment, you realize that if we're in the Jewish year 5,774, and we say there's 6,000 year cycle before the Mashiach comes, you think about that, you realize that every 1,000 years parallels one day of creation. This whole system is one system. There are 7 days. There are 6 days of the week. There are 6,000 years of this system. There's the 7th day, the Shabbos. There's 6 holidays. There's Yom Kippur. It's all lined up. All right. So now let's get to the question Michael just asked. Say the question you said again.
Why is Rosh Hashanah connected to Erev Shabbos Friday?
So why is Rosh Hashanah connected to Erev Shabbos? Now let's go back here. Back in the beginning of Adam and Eve's creation. When they were created, it says that what they had to do was to watch the Garden of Eden, do the mitzvahs there, not fall for the lure of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And if they would have entered into Shabbat. They would have entered into Shabbat, which is the great Shabbos. That would have been times of Mashiach, times of Olam Haba. They would have gone to Olam Haba. The 7th day there was going to be, if they would have made it from their time of Friday, from their birth on their Rosh Hashanah, if they would have been successful, they would have led it in to Shabbos, and that would have been called Shabbat HaGadol, the great Shabbos. That would have been the world to come. It's like our 6,000 years leading into the process of Mashiach and the process of the world to come. So what happens is, on Rosh Hashanah, we're back to that stage. And what we're doing is we're getting ready for that ultimate Shabbos, which is parallel now to which holiday? Yom Kippur.
But we do have Shabbat HaGadol, you say. We do that before Pesach.
Yeah, that's just a term. We call it the big Shabbat, but I mean Shabbat HaGadol in the sense that it's the ultimate Shabbat. Yom Shekula Aruch, a full day. I mean, it's eternity. We use the same term for Pesach, but we don't mean it that way.
Well, can you explain the idea of Mashiach in times of Adam and Eve? I didn't understand that.
It seems to be a bit of a non-starter. If you go, you have creation, you have Adam is around for a few hours, and then Mashiach. Like that seems to.
So
what's the point then?
Because like this. Let me answer both the questions. I don't want to get into a discussion about times of Mashiach right now, but the times of Mashiach lead us into the times of the world to come. It becomes the preface into what's called Olam Haba, Tchias Mason, the resurrection, the times. It's another topic, but that's what Mashiach is a lead-in to the time of the world to come.
Yeah, but that was also the purpose when Adam and Eve were.
So let me explain this. So right now, take the word Mashiach, because I don't want to get into that. It's leading into the time that Mashiach heralds, which is called Tchias HaMesim, called Olam Haba, that's called eternity. Okay? So right now what happens is that you had 6 days of creation. Okay? They would have been successful there, they would have led into times of the world to come. Similarly, we have 6,000 years. And when that's completed, that leads us into the great 7,000th millennium, which is already times of the world to come. And there's a period, I don't want to explain, that's confusing, but how that leads into with Mashiach. Mashiach is a lead-in time. So that's what it means. Okay. So the answer, So the answer to your question, Effie, is that you're looking at it as a few hours, but Adam and Eve's time was very different than our time. That's why it becomes one day becomes 1,000 years. Okay, so let's hang in with this concept. I know it's a little deep, but we'll come down to earth in a few moments. But I need you to get sort of the background for this. Okay, now Adam and Eve are created on Friday, leading into Shabbat. That Friday is now Rosh Hashanah. We're being restarted again, and therefore it's the day of judgment. And now we're trying to fix up and get ready for the world to come. Get ready for the parallel Yom Kippur. Now, there's something when Adam and Eve were being before Eve was formed the way she was, what happened to Adam?
Went to sleep.
Went to sleep. God put him to sleep. Okay? Now, right, it says that in the text, he went to sleep. Now, when a person goes to sleep, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's great.
Depends who you ask.
Depends who he asks. You don't like sleep, right?
You're 1/6 not alive, is it?
What? It's a lot of our life, right?
1/6 or something.
1/60th of death it tastes like.
Okay.
And
Because you have to wash
if you
your
sleep
hands.
eight hours, right? If you sleep 8 hours, it's a third of your life. Kind of freaky, right? If you really think about it. The Talmud makes a calculation that people's lives are only like 12 and a half years. So 80 years on 12 and a half years. Count how much time you sleep, how much time you eat, how much time you go to the bathroom, how much time it comes out like how much time.
Depends how much you really sleep though.
That's right.
Come to our house.
No sleep?
I'm just joking.
So is sleep good or bad? What do you think?
She's not sure.
Sleep is good.
Necessary but not recommendable.
So I as a Torah scholar try to minimize sleep. That's what it says. But in a certain way, sleep is good. It's called a yerida tzorch aliyah. It's called sometimes in life you need to go down to go up. And the idea of sleep, I want you to imagine. I want you to just get a picture of sleep here, because as I'm talking here, I'm starting to feel a little bit tired. I want you to picture the beauty of sleep. You see, you worked your whole day. Now imagine if you were on constant go. How would you ever reset? The sleep is a reset button. It actually helps you to grow in the next level. You accomplished this today. Tomorrow, it's a brand new start. But if you never slept, it would never be a new start. You would actually never know how to take the next step in your growth. So when you sleep, there's a cutoff point. There's been a completion. This is what you did today. Tomorrow is a brand new day. And that's why the sages say that sleep is in a certain way it's bad because you can do more, but in a certain way it has an aspect of being very good because it's a downer in order to go up. It's a yerida l'tzorach aliyah. It goes down in order to bring you up.
It's the body's shabbos.
It's the what?
It's the body's shabbos.
Okay. But it becomes the ability to renew. So Adam goes to sleep, and it's going to be a good thing. Eventually he's going to have his wife, he's going to build. But that sleep thing was a potential negative in his system. And after he sleeps, after there's a downer, he makes the mistake of eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Right? Now.
Because you're vulnerable too when you're sleeping.
Right. Anything like every time you go down something, you may be able to get up later. It's the potential of.
But also Hashem put him to sleep before he created Kabbalah, so there's.
Yeah, but it's still called sleep. It's still called that he's going to go higher because he can build with Chava, but there's a moment where he's just sleeping. He's just out. Let me ask you one question. What do you think's higher, the sense of sight or the sense of hearing? I think it's a greater sense.
Hearing.
Yeah.
Hearing? Why hearing?
Because you have to interpret it.
Wow.
Seeing it's like right there, but hearing you have to like hear it, interpret it. Your brain has to.
Very good. Okay, good. What do you think?
I think seeing gives you a more penetrating, all-encompassing look, but hearing can be something that's farther away. So it could be something that's higher. So sight is more.
Well, why can I hear farther away? Can I see? I may see farther?
You can hear things you can't see.
You can explain a really deep concept that you may not be able to draw a picture of it.
You can choose what you see, you can't choose what you hear.
All right? That's why it says that the fingers are actually pointed, so you can stick your fingers in your ears, so this is Lashon Hara. The Gemara says that. Your fingers they fit perfectly into your ears. You should try this. They do. They
My
fit
mom
right
says
in.
this is the best part is one.
That's foot, right? That's the flat. Right. No, everyone's fingers fit into their own ears.
But they say that your eyes can lie to you, you should really trust your ears.
But what?
Your eyes can lie to you, you should trust your ears.
Why would your eyes lie to you?
They can deceive you. It's easy to deceive yourself.
But your eyes? Really?
There's that saying, seeing is believing.
You see what you want to see. You interpret.
You hear what you want to hear.
Mhm.
So what you want to interpret.
Visually.
But you guys said all very good points, and let me just I'm going to boil it down really to what Michael said, what Morgan just said. But you all said similar concepts. In one sense, seeing is greater. Because seeing is clarity. It's clear. It's clear. When I see something, it's like, got it. In a certain way, hearing is greater, in a certain sense. Because once you can't see in the dark, you can hear in the dark. Not only can you, when you hear something, and this is why hearing is very different. You see, in Kabbalah, the seeing is called wisdom, and the hearing is called bina. This is called chokhmah, and this is called bina. The difference is, when I see something, I see a whole picture at one time. But when I hear something, I can't hear a whole thing at one time. I hear one word, 2 words, 3 words. How do I make sense of it? I have to string it together, like Morgan said. I have to be involved and make it make sense. Seeing, you get the whole thing in one shot. Okay? Hearing, you're taking little parts and you're putting it together. Now, I want to say one more premise, and I'm gonna tie this thing together. I believe, I said this last night in another class, I believe that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur work hand in hand. One is the holiday of awe of God, and one is love of God. Which one do you think is which?
Yom Kippur's love.
I think Yom Kippur's all.
No, Yom Kippur should be love because that's forgiveness, right?
What?
Yom Kippur should be love because that's forgiveness, right? Isn't that
Well,
when,
he's
when
forgiven
the
us.
when the tablets are broken?
Yeah.
And all is judgment.
Well, here's the problem. The reason why most people answer Yom Kippur is awe, and it's not. Yom Kippur is love. Rosh Hashanah is awe. But most people say that because they're not familiar with the Talmudic teaching that the happiest day of the year is Yom Kippur.
Yeah, because you get to stay alive.
No, that's not why. You forgive it. Forgive it. That's true. You forgive it. That's right. That's true. That's true. That's true. But I go to this theme a lot in Yom Kippur. You have to understand something, that Yom Kippur is not about torturing yourself. What it is about bringing out your inner essence. That's what it is. The reason, the great Hasidics say, there was one Hasidic master who said, there are no fast days in Judaism. So the student said, Rabbi, what are you talking about? There are plenty of fast days. What about Tisha B'Av, 9th of Av? What about Yom Kippur? Those are fast days. So he said, no, they're not. On Yom Kippur, on Tisha B'Av, who could eat? And in Yom Kippur, who wants to eat? Now, I want to eat personally. But I understand the concept. His concept was, the idea of Yom Kippur, the reason why you don't eat is not to torture yourself, it's to bring out my essence. I am a spiritual being on Yom Kippur. I don't need to eat. I'm beyond it.
But doesn't the Torah use the word torture yourself?
Inui. Right. So the Maharal explains that what you're doing is, he says in the Kabbalah that there are 5 parts of your soul. There are 5 things you can't do on Yom Kippur. And each one is jolting your soul to bring out your soul. Each one is like a jolt that brings out, whoa, I'm a soul. And that's why our judge favorably on Yom Kippur. Because what happens is, says the Satan, the force of negativity, says, look at these people. They're amazing. They're like angels. They don't eat, they don't drink, they're dressed in white. So Yom Kippur is a day of love. Rosh Hashanah is the day, you gotta see, you gotta be in awe. Oh my gosh. There's a creator in this world, I'm gonna be judged. And Yom Kippur, you're like, okay, I'm here, I'm bringing it all out. So that's why, by the way, if you look, we didn't take a thing here. No, that's not worth it. It's not worth it. Give me 1 second. If you look here, how do you say the C in Hebrew?
Down.
Right, Yira, what did you say? Ro'eh, Re'iyah.
Oh, to see. That's that
The C, what did you think I said?
S-E-A. I said yum.
The word is to see, Ro'eh, Re'iyah. And hu yir'eh. It's the same word as to have awe. Why is seeing the same word why is seeing and awe the same word?
Did you scare something right in front of you?
Yeah, because really, if you believe that God is in the room and you could see it clearly, you would ah! But when you don't see it, then you don't feel the same feeling. That's why the first law in Shulchan Aruch is is to meditate on the fact that God sees you all the time, and that gives you awe because you're in God's presence. So when you would see something, you have awe. Rosh Hashanah is awe. It's seeing God. It's seeing. Yom Kippur is already love. Okay? With that introduction, I'm going to explain where I'm going with this. When God creates Adam and Eve, on their Rosh Hashanah, there's tremendous awe. They can see God clearly. But he has a sort of a moment of going down. He has the Tardema, he's put to sleep, and then he gets up, and then he makes some mistakes. And then he eats a tree of knowledge of good and evil. Right? After that, he no longer sees God. That's why he starts hiding from God. He can't see God. It's like I told you, the little kids, they always do this thing. They always say, little kids, you can't see me. You can't see me. No, I see you fine. You don't see me. When you close your eyes and you think that because you can't see the other person, they can't see you. So Adam can't see God anymore. He thinks God can't see him. He hides. So what happens? Once it's dark already, you can't use your sense of sight. So then it says Adam hears God moving through the garden. That was his chance. You can't see, you're in the darkness. Rosh Hashanah is awe. You got to see God. You don't see it anymore, so you're in the dark, God doesn't let you hear him. That's the process. You got to get from Rosh Hashanah, Adam's there, got to get to Shabbos. He stumbled. Our Rosh Hashanah is exactly the same process as Adam was. See, what happens like this. Rosh Hashanah is supposed to be seeing God. Awe! Oh my gosh, it's real. We're being created again, and God's judging me right now. He's looking at what I am. I see it. But the problem is, we kind of sleep sometimes. You need a sound to wake you up. What's a sound you need to wake you up? The shofar. The shofar is once you can no longer see God, you have the sleep of Adam. So God, and this is what the commentaries say, God's voice going in through the garden is the shofar. What you're hearing now, it's a way to wake you up. As the Maimonides says, the shofar is Ur Yishar Mishnaschem. Wake up, sleeping people. It's that wake-up call. It gives you the ability to have the awe. When you hear that shofar blowing, it's the king's coronation. You say, oh, Hashem is here. Wow, Hashem is judging me. I'm being recreated at this moment. It's my birth again, and now he's looking, how did I do in the rest of the year? That is the idea of Rosh Hashanah. The background, again, just to understand, Rosh Hashanah is awe. It's realizing you're being born at this moment, and when you're being born at this moment, you have to be judged how you did. It has to become a annual performance review. Annual performance review. You need to get that, and you have to have the proper awe. And if you can't see because you spent the year being in the dark, of sleeping, you need that wake-up sound. You can't use your power of sight anymore. But the power, the sound of God in the garden, the sound of the shofar can wake you up to actually see, to have that awe, and that's going to lead us then afterwards to Yom Kippur, which is going to be connection of love. Questions, comments, thoughts on what I said so far? Yeah?
Is there something positive about sleep that we experience on Rosh Hashanah? Or is it supposed to be wake, fully clear?
So, what's that?
They say if you sleep on Rosh Hashanah, you sleep throughout the day.
Right, we're going to get to that in a second.
But you
So-
don't sleep anymore in Rosh Hashanah?
What's that?
Like for 10 days you don't sleep?
No, we're going to get to that right. We'll get to that in a second. So I don't know if the Rosh Hashanah is, but it has to be minimized. I mean, you have to sleep for the need of getting up to have strength. You can't sleep in the day, which we'll talk about in a few seconds. Okay? But this is the kind of background. I want you to understand a little bit the idea of Rosh Hashanah and how this plays out. So now, any questions, comments, thoughts? Because I want to tie these things in and take this into our halacha issues too. Any questions, thoughts, comments on this? Sort of make sense? Kind of make sense? Okay. So now, the first thing I want to do with you now is, based on this, I want to start out with the prayers of Rosh Hashanah. What's the prayers that we say in Rosh Hashanah? Okay? There's one unique part of the prayer you have to understand. Okay? And this is the fundamental aspect of Rosh Hashanah. There are 3 parts of the prayer. You're going to see this when you open up your Musaf. The morning prayer is going to be the same as usual, pretty much, except for the Shemona Esrei will be different. But then you get to this long Musaf, and you don't even know what's going on. So I'm going to help you to get a picture of what's happening and to what these things are. There are 3 parts of the main aspect of the Rosh Hashanah prayer. They're called Malchios, recognizing God as the king. And we say 10 verses about God being the king, recognizing God as the king. Okay? There's the second part, it's called Zichronot, remembrances. And we say how God remembered Noah. And mostly we have to say 10 verses. And you'll see in the Shemona it's very long. There's going to be verses and discussions about God being the king, about remembrances, and then 10 verses about the shofar. Okay? That is the way the prayers are structured. King, remembrances, and shofar. Let me try to explain what this whole business is, okay? So what's the king aspect of Rosh Hashanah? What are we doing with that? What is that? What?
We owe.
We owe him? He's the king?
He makes decrees, right?
He makes decrees?
Isn't there an aspect of
Every limb of our bodies.
Isn't there an aspect of coronation?
Coronation. Okay. Coronation means Lamlich the Melech. Let me explain this. This is something very strange if you notice throughout your prayers. On Rosh Hashanah, you never say, I'm sorry. Do you know that? Isn't that weird? If you're being judged, shouldn't the first thing you do is say, we don't do any of that. We don't do any of that. As a matter of fact, on the Avinu Malkeinu, where the first one says, Avinu Malkeinu Chatal V'necha, our God, we've sinned before you. Some people take that out on Rosh Hashanah. Others say you don't have to take it out because if you read it, it says, Avinu Malkeinu Chatal V'necha, and then the next one is, Avinu Malkeinu, we have no king but you. So they read it, our forefathers sinned, but we have no one else but you, God. Some people say it's not referring to us. Well, what kind of business is that, not saying you sinned on Rosh Hashanah? And you don't. If you look at the whole prayer, you don't say it. They want to know why.
Being judged.
What?
Being judged.
Right, so shouldn't you say I did admit what you did wrong?
Put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
That's right. You think you should?
That's what I have to say.
What did you say?
Put your best foot forward.
Meaning what? Explain.
Meaning, don't stand there and talk about how lousy you are. Stand there and talk about how great you are.
Okay, but wouldn't God be upset that you're like as if not admitting it? I think so. I think Avi's got a very good point. This is very interesting because the law is we do not go and say sins. We don't mention sins at all. There's a few different reasons for that. One reason is because the idea of Rosh Hashanah is not necessarily about saying I'm sorry. Like Morgan said, that's Yom Kippur. What this is about is you're back to the day of creation and you have to have awe and see, you got to recognize God as the king. The whole idea is the recognition. The idea is to recognize, wait a minute, there is a ruler of this world. That is the theme of Rosh Hashanah, is to recognize that there is a creator in this world. It's to see the world clearly. Yes, I did wrong things, I know that. I spent hopefully time before Hashanah apologizing, and I know I've made a mistake, I know I've done that wrong. But you know what? Today, what becomes the overwhelming theme is to recognize truth in the world. It's to see truth. It's to see that there's a creator in the world. To see that there's a king of the world. That's why the theme of Rosh Hashanah is coronating the king. That's what we focus on. So the first 10 things we say, the 10 verses are recognizing God as the king, and that's the theme of the whole thing. Now what's remembrances? What's zichron? The second part of the prayer is God remembered Noah, he remembered this, he remembered that. What's that all about? Well, why? We need to know God remembers? It's weird, no?
An appreciation of where we've been or where we come from. I mean, it's the history, it's,
Yeah. And why is that important to say 10 verses about God remembering? We're talking about God remembers. Why is that so important? You say it in a good direction. Keep developing. It's kind of like it's history. What does that mean? So
With the Greeks, with the.
it's the covenant, right? But why is it so important to Rosh Hashanah?
It's an annual performance review. So remember all the good stuff that happened.
Remember the good stuff, God? Yeah? I think it's a little different, though. I think on Rosh Hashanah, it's to remember what my objective is. Remember my purpose. If this is the annual...
Performance review. Performance review.
What's it called?
Annual
Annual performance review.
review.
That's the annual performance review. Then what has to happen is, I have to first recognize the truth. There's a boss to this company. He has expectations. And now I want to say, let me remember what my objective is here. So when you're remembering, and you're saying God remembers, He remembers, what He's remembering? He's remembering you. He's remembering you the way you're supposed to be, what you're really about. That's the prayer. 10 verses about making God the king. 10 verses about the remembrances. And how do you do that? How do you wake yourself up to realize God is the king? And how do you bring out the remembrance of what you're supposed to do? Through the act of the shofar. The shofar is the wake-up call that gets you the picture. There's a creator in this world, and there is therefore a responsibility for me to do certain things. That's the structure of Rosh Hashanah. The structure of Rosh Hashanah, of all the prayers, is remember God's the king. And if I made mistakes, but I'm not focusing on that right now. I'm focusing on seeing the truth. There's a creator in the world. And I'm also focusing on the fact that I have a purpose, remembrances. And the thing that is waking me up spiritually to be able to remember that and to know that is the shofar. And that's the structure of the whole prayer of Rosh Hashanah. Questions, thoughts, comments? Kind of makes sense, a little makes sense.
are we supposed to hear the shofar every day at Elul, except for?
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to all these things. Okay, so that now I want to say one other thing. This is maybe and this is after this will be a lot easier. This is one last sort of deep point in this, but there's another explanation why we don't ask forgiveness on Rosh Hashanah. Another explanation is very beautiful. There's a law that if you pray for your friend, let's say your friend needs something, and you need the same thing, but you pray for them, then what happens? You get answered first. And you should think that, I'm going to pray for them so I get it first. No, that won't work then. You got to actually do it because you're thinking about them. So you pray for your friend's needs, then God says, wow, look at this person. He's not so self-absorbed, he's thinking what other people need. So the Vilna Gaon says the same thing by Rosh Hashanah. It's true today of judgment. But if you could say for a minute, wow, I'm being judged, and really part of me should be praying for myself. Oh, I did all these things. But you know what? I want to pray that the world becomes a different place. That people realize God is the king of the world, He runs the world. When you pray for that, it's like praying for your God before yourself. When you do that, God answers you first. You have that amazing idea? God's like you're praying for God before you're praying for yourself. That's the prayer. And if you look, that explains to you all the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, because all the prayers are, instead of saying, God, please, please, please give us life, we mention it on the side, but you'll see the whole prayer of Rosh Hashanah is, give your glory to the nations. Let everyone see you're the creator. Let everyone unite. The prayer has nothing to do with what you would think. If I was writing Rosh Hashanah prayers, the whole thing would be begging and pleading. The whole thing would be, please, 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 please. It's totally not. The whole prayer of Rosh Hashanah is, ten pachtichat, give your awe to the nations. Ten kavod, give your honor to people. People realize that you're running the world. It's all about fixing the world, because the day of Rosh Hashanah is about recognizing the real reality of the world. There's a creator, He made the world, you have a purpose, there's a purpose, your purpose is being revisited today, and realize that's through this call of the shofar, like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Okay? Does it make sense? Questions, comments, thoughts before I get to the next idea? Kind of makes sense a little bit?
Why is clarity necessary to lead up to the tshuva?
Because otherwise everything's an illusion. If you're deluding yourself about something, you can't fix things up when you don't even know the basic truth of life. You know, a person thinks that, a person has this crazy picture of God, then how does he return? He's got the whole thing was wrong in the beginning. Rosh Hashanah's got to be that wake up call. The shofar is the wake up call. Okay, so that's a little bit about the prayers of Rosh Hashanah and the purpose of Rosh Hashanah. It's the day of judgment. Okay, day of judgment. We're being judged for the physical year as well for our spiritual status, what we're up to. Okay, we pray that to see the truth of the world, and that should come out in the world. Now, there's some other really weird things we do on Rosh Hashanah. I need to explain. Besides for the maybe we'll talk about more later, but some of the weird things we do. First, we do something called simanim. Okay, we know what simanim are? Simanim are, there's a very weird habit that Jews do. That on the night of Rosh Hashanah, they eat certain foods and they say certain blessings before. They eat well, everyone knows the apple and honey, right? They take apple and honey, and please Hashem, year so let it be your will that we should have a sweet year. And we eat that. Yeah. Then we take really weird things. We take, for example, carrots, which in Yiddish is called merit. And that means to multiply. And we say, God, let our, multiply our mitzvahs, like this carrot. It's called merit. And then we'll say, you can do it in English also. Like we do it in English all the time. We say, we eat beets. And we say, Hashem, beat our enemies. We do all that stuff. Make the same stupid jokes as raising salary. We do all the same stupid every year. But it's kind of a weird thing. And why are we doing them? It's simane de milsa. It's a sign. It's a sign. If you eat this kind of food, it's going to be good. So much so that people have a custom not to eat nuts on Rosh Hashanah at Gozim. Walnuts. Why? Because they're the numerical value of the word sin in Hebrew.
Any nut?
And egos. It means a walnut. You can have it in your food, but they don't eat nuts on plain. The food you can eat, but it's to eat straight.
Nuts.
That's just walnut, just walnut.
I think it's walnut and egos. Yeah. So that's kind of weird, right? Do you know people don't eat things that are bitter on Rosh Hashanah? Bitter. Chamutz. Chamutz. Now here, this is a fantastic halacha. I just saw this recently, because the halacha is you don't eat things that are vinegary. But I saw actually brought down that you could eat things that are harif. Good for you. You can eat spicy, but you can't eat chamutz. I need the English words for this. Chamutz is sour, right? Sour. You can't have sour. But if you spicy is not necessarily a problem.
What about bitter?
We were never sure it was.
What about bitter?
So bitter not either. Bitter not. But let's say, for example, the example they bring in halacha is a pepper, black pepper. That's called spicy. It's harif, but it's not chamutz. It's harif. It's spicy.
What about pickles?
What? Pickles? No, because pickles going to be sour pickles.
Killing me.
Yeah.
I always eat pickles when I
Yeah. Now, why don't we eat these things, and why do we? This is really weird. And this is the other thing that Baital said before. Also, another custom that people don't sleep on Rosh Hashanah day. They don't sleep on Rosh Hashanah. Now, unless they have. But again, I want this series is going to be combining Agadata with halacha. Halacha l'maisa, practical halacha is that after midday you need to put your head down because you feel like you're exploding. You're allowed to. Okay.
Midday, meaning?
After midday, in Atlanta it's probably 1 o'clock.
So after lunch.
Yeah. Theoretically you can. Now, some people say it's better not to, but if you need to, meaning if you are just like zonked, you can. Second day you can be more lenient than the first day, and you got to remember the other principle. This is a hard principle. Yoshev ubatil ki yoshen dami. The Talmud says that sleep is figurative here, meaning sleeping you can't do on Rosh Hashanah. But you can't be a walking, sleeping person either. If you do nothing on Rosh Hashanah, you're sitting there wasting time. You're not, doing things that are positive, learning, talking in things, having a shower, having a yontif meal. If you're not doing things, if you're just wasting time, it's like you're asleep anyway. So you don't want to be asleep on Rosh Hashanah, and you don't want to waste your time. So my question for you now, ladies and gentlemen, is what are all these weird things about, don't eat this food, don't eat that food? Is that really going to make a difference in our lives? I mean, come on.
I think, as we said last week, that Rosh Hashanah is like the seed that plants the entire year.
Very good. Let's understand. When the baby is formed, okay, in the moment of conception, when the DNA blueprint is being created, that's when if something goes wrong there, you got a problem. If something's off with that, that's the blueprint. Rosh Hashanah is the blueprint of a year. As I told you before, you're being born. So you might not get it right the whole year, but you want to get it right for 24 hours, and if you can 48 hours, you want to get it right. And therefore, there's the famous Kutzker law. And the Kutzker said, some people don't eat nuts because they have a numerical value, gematria of sin. He says, I'll tell you something else you shouldn't have on Rosh Hashanah, because it's also the numerical value of sin. And that's called sin. Sin is the value of sin. So don't sin. So people get into these weird things. A guy yelled at his wife, what are you doing? You brought me the nuts!
Walnuts.
The walnuts!
My weakness.
You're nuts, because now you're yelling at your wife, and it's worse than anything. You could have the nuts. She should have eaten the nuts already. And I yelled at her. So the idea of Rosh Hashanah is, with all of these things, is you don't have to go totally crazy about it. They're customs, they're good customs. But don't lose the meaning of them. The meaning of them is, this is a day I want to get it right. I want to get it exactly right, and that's going to be a sort of a DNA, a snapshot of my whole year. And that's why it's an amazing law that this I love, because there's a law that the 10 days of tshuva, the 10 days from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, if there are certain things that you're not strict about normally,
Be strict.
you should still do it. You should do it in 10 days. Now, isn't that hypocritical?
Yeah, but we're talking about bribe. So we cannot bribing Hashem. So it's not a hypocritical.
I didn't bribe in Hashem. What do you know what that means? Why did I bribe Hashem? Hashem takes bribes?
So we're clarifying who we are.
It says it doesn't take bribes, it says. Hashem says.
I know it's true, but in these 10 days, it's like, okay, you're standing to a trial, so you wanna show Hashem that you at least you're trying to make an effort, taking upon yourself stuff that you haven't.
It's different. It's different than bribe. See, I don't agree with that bribe idea, because I think if you're doing it like a bribe, you're in trouble. I don't think that's good. But I think the other idea you're saying is very good.
Take it upon yourself.
See, what happens is, it's that it's not hypocritical, because it's not that you're saying that, I'm trying to fool God. You're not trying to fool yourself. You say, this is where I want to be. I know I'm not there yet, but for a limited time only, I could reach something that I want to do. So let me show that's what I'm really about. And that is actually brought in halacha. It's brought in halacha. That people who do various things, everyone to know what they do. There's certain halachas that I don't eat pasro during the year. I eat during the 10 days. In the 10 days, I eat certain things that I won't eat certain things I will eat during the year because they're kosher, they're fine. But there's certain stringencies that during the 10 days people take on, and it's a good thing. It's the same concept. You want to say, listen, I'm being recreated on Rosh Hashanah. It's a new start, and this is the way I want to be. And everything you put into that DNA building is now showing everything comes after the head. Everything comes after the DNA. Yeah.
So say somebody wants to makadosh themselves in eating, like they want to eat in the proper way. So are the meals in Rosh Hashanah, therefore, should we practice pre-shoot, should we practice restraint in the meal, or should we enjoy the meal like the Shabbos meal?
Very good, very good. And this is the last point I'm going to talk about, and then we'll call for a day for today. I would recommend a new thing. I think maybe we should fast on Rosh Hashanah.
I don't want to spend my year fasting.
Now, what I'm saying, I didn't make that up. It's a question. It's a question in halacha. Maybe you should fast in Rosh Hashanah. Why do you think you should fast in Rosh Hashanah?
Because we're spiritual beings.
No, it's Yom Kippur. Why Rosh Hashanah should you fast? Why would you think maybe you should fast in Rosh
You
Hashanah?
want to stroke your desires in the day that sets the tone for the day.
Okay, another reason. More a simple reason. It's a very
Don't want to
simple
be a
reason.
glutton all year.
No, I want a simple reason now. Simple reason why.
Practice for Yom Kippur.
No. What's happening in Rosh Hashanah? Your DNA. I know. That's a nice idea.
You're being
You
judged.
were born. DNA. And what?
You're being judged.
Being judged. That's not the forget the base. You're being judged. So you're like, ah! You're being judged. Maybe you should fast. So the answer is, so why in the world do you have a festive meal? You're being judged.
Confident.
What?
Confident.
Confident. So the analogy I always give you is as follows. Imagine you're on trial. You're going in to be judged. It is a case of capital offense. You could be tried, I don't want to say even. You walk into the courtroom, okay, and you're shaking, you're shivering, you're nervous. The judge is up there, they have him on his balcony, he's sitting up there, and you're afraid to look up, you're looking down because you're petrified. Finally, you get the guts to look up. When you look up, you're shocked. You freak out. You see the judge and you flip. Because you see, the judge is your father. Hey, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's a good deal. That's Rosh Hashanah.
Better your grandmother than your father.
That's the grandma. That is Rosh Hashanah. That's what it is. So Rosh Hashanah has a different feeling than all other Yom Tovs. And I want you to understand this. And that's why in halacha, and this series I'm going to bring in halacha and in the thing at the same time. The halacha is your finest clothing you wear on the other holidays. On Rosh Hashanah you wear nice clothing, nice, clean, beautiful clothing. But if you have, let's say, fancy silk, it's not Rosh Hashanah. Because Rosh Hashanah has a mixture. It has a certain amount of fear because you're being judged. It's awe. You're seeing the seriousness of it. You want to see it. But at the same time, although you're being judged, as Effie said before, you have confidence that since the judge is your father, is your parent, that you're going to be judged in a positive way. And that's the law in Rosh Hashanah. We don't say Hallel in Rosh Hashanah. We don't say Hallel in Rosh Hashanah. Why not? Because it's a time of judgment. The book of death and life and death is opened in front, so we can't like, yay! But at the same time, we're happy because we're confident. And that's the feeling you should be walking around with Rosh Hashanah. It's a very bizarre... Rosh Hashanah is the strangest feeling for me of all the holidays. I can never get it because I have such different emotions. But if you imagine the analogy of the person who's being judged and yet is being judged by their parent, then you have a different sense of it. So that's the halacha. The halacha is we don't fast on Rosh Hashanah. But there was an idea maybe we should. Yet we come into Rosh Hashanah with this feeling of confidence because we're being judged by our Father. Therefore, the halacha is to make a festive meal, is to be happy, is to be confident. But yet, not to lose your head and to become too frivolous in the sense that would already detract from your understanding that it is a day of judgment. That's what's happening. Okay? So we learned today is a bunch of things. We learned the concept of Rosh Hashanah, what it is. It's a day of being born again. You're starting again. Therefore, you're going to be judged. Okay? When you're being judged by your father, so you're scared, but you're happy. We've also learned that it's a day of the beginning, the DNA of your year, and therefore all of the customs, what we do, of the simanim, of the good signs, are not to get lost in the custom. I'm saying you should do them, but it's the deeper meaning of it is to make sure that you try to live the day right and the whole week right as a new beginning for you that's going to hopefully lead into either some of that or all that are part of that the rest of the year, and it'll be that next step in your growth. Questions, thoughts, comments?
You're saying that during those 10 days you're a lot stricter. And Adam and I talked about this one time. If you do something 3 times, don't you have to continue to do it that way?
Yeah. So
Like straw milk or
what
whatever.
you should do is you should just say, you could say, say before you start doing it, I'm not taking this on as an neder. Okay? Now, as far as Chalav Yisrael milk,
Or whatever.
I'm just giving
I thought you
a
had
different
said
halacha. If somebody only drank Chalav Yisrael milk because they thought that there was something wrong with drinking the other milk, that doesn't count as a vow. You don't need to nullify that. Only if you knew that there's nothing wrong at all with drinking regular milk, and you said, I want to be strict anyway to have Chalav Yisrael, that if a person does 3 times and they have a vow, they have to nullify the vow. If a person, let's say they grew up in an environment that they told them, oh, you can't have the other milk, it's forbidden, and then they drank Chalav Yisrael because of that, that doesn't constitute a vow. And Moshe says it's a mistake because there's no forbidden part about American milk.
Yeah,
So Moshe Feinstein wrote that anyway. Yeah.
So are there specific things though during the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, specific ways that we're strict? Because there's 1,000 things you could do. to be
Well,
strict.
I would tell everyone to take what's relevant for them. The Shulchan Aruch brings this thing about Pas Yisrael, about eating Jewish baked bread.
I like pretzels,
Yeah.
cookies.
Yeah, so it's not so easy. I'm telling
No.
you. No, those 10. I mean, now
Yeah,
that
the
now I'm no
kosher
carb, I'm
section.
okay. But
Sprouts, that new Sprouts store has some Pas Yisrael baked goods.
does it really?
Pas Yisrael, really?
Kroger
Yep,
has
I have a
Pas
picture
Yisrael
of it.
baked
And some
goods.
bread.
So the law of Pas Yisrael is Jewish baked bread. Okay. Now, generally, we say that bakery bread we could have. The rationale is that it's totally permissible if the bakery bread of a non-Jew is better, is cheaper, is easier to get. If you have two in front of you, one's Jewish baked bread, non-Jewish baked, you take Jewish baked bread. But if the non-Jewish baked bread is better, cheaper, or available, and one's not, in Jewish law you're allowed to have what's called pat palta. You're allowed to have non-Jewish bread, not Jewish.
Like Arnold.
Yeah, not Jewish
It's
factory baked
textured,
bread.
but
Yeah, now
it's not
as opposed to
Jewish
there's a problem of not Jewish baked individual bread because you'll come over and you'll eat. It's like the wine. You come over and you'll socialize and you'll end up just fraternizing. But on the 10 days, that's one of the examples that they give in the Shulchan Aruch. But again, I think you should do it individually. I think you should just try to figure out, and I think everyone could do that. If you think about what thing you kind of like think, it's probably right in your head. The thing you think you should take on, but you don't take on because it's too hard, you don't feel like doing it, do it for 10 days.
What could you lose?
Yeah. 10 days you can hack it. But that's the concept. Okay, so next, and we talk about also the 3 parts of the prayer. The king, recognize God as the king, remembrances, and the shofar.